The Kobold cordless vacuum cleaner has a truly eye-watering price of £750, even though it's not new and has been around since at least May 2019. This is hugely more expensive than even the latest top-end Dyson cordless equivalent. It claims to have next-level cleaning, and it's not unreasonable for any customer to therefore expect it to be hugely better by all objective measures for this price. In this review, we'll look at the evidence and find out. I paid for this myself, so this isn't a bribe review, which are full of misleading half-truths that are much worse than lies, because they hide behind an air of faux credibility. I always reject offers of free product reviews, because I prefer to give the full truth without any of the bootlicking of the sellouts. As always, I start a review with the cleaning performance, which is one of the most important things to know. If a vacuum doesn't clean well, then what's the point of it? For this price, I'm expecting this product to significantly outperform the top-end Dyson in each power mode. The testing here follows the usual procedure, shown in the overlay, to carefully measure the rate at which the harmful fine dust is extracted from deep pile carpet with waterproof backing. This testing carefully avoids all the common flaws seen on YouTube to make sure it's both representative and repeatable, and you see exactly the mathematical trends you'd expect in the data, confirming it works. All data was collected with the front flap down to maximise suction and thus airflow through the resistive pile. This plot shows the relative rate at which the injected dust is extracted with each pass. This machine is an excellent performer, and its normal mode obliterates even the boost mode of the other knockoff Cash-in Dyson clones. Even more impressively, its boost mode betters typical mains cleaner performance on the market for first pass cleaning and was able to remove all the dirt after 10 passes. This is extremely impressive for a cordless cleaner that doesn't carry the Dyson label. It's this performance which is likely what the manufacturer thinks justifies such an extreme price tag. Its low mode performance is fairly poor though, and comparable to the Dyson clones. Interestingly, as I'll discuss later, there are 2 brush bar speeds on this machine. All data shown was collected with the brush bar on its highest speed, but I also measured performance in normal suction mode with the brush bar on low to look at what difference it makes. Performance was noticeably worse, showing how important a brush bar is at flexing fibres to dislodge trapped particles into the airflow. Unfortunately, despite these excellent performance results compared to the Dyson clones, when compared to the actual Dyson it's competing against, based on cost, the data clearly shows its performance is utterly obliterated by the V15 in every single power mode. Yes, £750. The V15's low mode gives much better performance than the Kobold's normal mode for first pass pickup, and ends up removing comparable amounts after 10 cleans. That's fairly astounding. The V15's auto mode completely destroys the Kobold's equivalent and rivals its high power mode, performing comparably to a standard mains machine. The V15's boost mode not only produces the same market-leading first pass performance of any machine, but the single fastest 100% removal of embedded dirt of any machine on the market, including the final mains power Ball 2 model, which is now the second best performer. This is the reason why Dyson are market leading, and everyone tries to copy off them as much as patents allow. And the performance difference is partly explained by looking at the run times and estimating the corresponding power consumption. The Kobold has shorter run times in both low and boost modes. It has a longer runtime in the default mode, but the reason why becomes clear when you realise it's running at less than half the power, which explains its considerably reduced performance. This is because of critical weaknesses with their technology. Firstly, they lack the highly advanced and power-dense motors Dyson has developed and patented, and so have to use a much larger, heavier, less efficient, technologically inferior motor to compensate. To keep overall product weight down, they thus then need to skimp on battery size, which is only 74 watt-hours, compared to Dyson's 22% bigger 91 watt-hour battery, which, incidentally, Vorwerk charged the same price for, despite theirs having lower capacity. It's amazing what a fact check can reveal about how customers are treated. Only Dyson's technology has allowed high power, high performance, long run times, and low weights all at once. Others have had to compromise somewhere, and it's clear from the data and measurements that the manufacturers hide the full truth. Others on YouTube don't seem to understand enough to know what to measure and why. Again, the Kobold cordless is £750 and hugely more expensive than the top-end Dyson cordless. And while this machine is a great performer, To charge hugely more money than a product which utterly obliterates it says so much about their opinion of the customer. This is why I make these review videos, to show the customer what the manufacturer isn't telling them, so they can make an informed choice and not be deceived by half-truths. Many other reviews on an unfettered platform like YouTube are peddling false or misleading conclusions based on objectively poor and unrepresentative testing that doesn't adequately quantify relative differences and show this essential information. This does a disservice to viewers, so look out for it. This machine also lacks any kind of reactive suction, which the V15 has. The V15 cleverly and accurately detects how much dirt the user has in the carpet or on hard floor at any given time, and adjusts suction in real time to help remove it faster. This allows high performance without consuming battery power unnecessarily. These valuable features are missing on this hugely more expensive machine. The cleaner head is fairly standard. It's quite big, bulky and heavy, which makes it hard to get into tighter spaces. It has a narrow brush bar, which makes it vulnerable to hair wrapping, and has no anti-tangle feature, meaning hairs have to be manually removed. It's also belt-driven. Belts are old-fashioned technology the best have done away with years ago. Belts can degrade, snap and fail, making them a weak point. They also leave a huge unswept path in the carpet because they block the bar from having bristles there, which undermines the benefits of having successfully reduced the edge gap to ensure good edge cleaning. Dyson have been using epicyclic drives instead of belts for the better part of a decade now, so there's no excuse for such a poor approach in a product this expensive. There's also a switch at the front which can be used to lower a rubber flap. This helps to avoid suction losses on carpets to give better performance, although it prevents bigger particles from entering the machine. Except, this switch is hidden on the underside, meaning you've got to stop cleaning if you want to toggle it, and it's such a small and fiddly slider that it's quite difficult to do. This kind of technology was in Dyson's products such as the DC41 Mark II almost a decade ago, back in 2014. Dyson did away with this crude approach a long time ago in favour of gates, which simultaneously allow large particles into the head and suction relief if needed. To be using such old technology on a machine this expensive is unacceptable. The consequence of these outdated designs is abundantly clear on hard floors, where the Kobold is able to handle the easy particles but struggles with the larger ones and leaves behind some of the fine dust. The larger particles can't fit because there's no gates large enough for them, even with the front flap up, and the fine dust was left behind where the drive bolt was. The V15 on the other hand, using gates and an epicyclic drive, copes easily with all reasonable particle sizes on all floor types without any head switching. The proof is in the pudding. There's a button on the brush bar which adjusts its rotation speed. It's not clear why you'd want to reduce the speed of the brush bar, especially as the machine performs better when it's in its faster mode, which incidentally it doesn't start in. Every time you start the machine, it rotates slowly, and you have to manually push the head button to make it spin faster. And I've found this button to be fiddly, and doesn't always seem to work when you press it. It's just a nuisance to have to do this. The brush bar does nicely turn off when you stand the machine upright. Quite why they didn't think to turn the machine off as well, when you're clearly not using it, is a bit of a mystery. The head also relies on two fixed back wheels to turn, which completely undermines the swivel head, designed to help maneuver the head in use. This means while you get some maneuverability, you're still noticeably restricted compared to the much better designed and maneuverable V15 ball joint. It's a classic example of a clone of Dyson technology which is patented, so people are left kludging an inferior knockoff feature. I'd expect more than this for £750. This machine has the form factor of an old-fashioned upright the best have done away with. While it brings the advantage of being able to stand upright, it brings drawbacks of always having to stomp on the head to make it go, of not being able to store it on the wall out of the way, of having a large footprint and taking up lots of floor space in storage, of not being as low profile as the competition, and of not being able to get into tight spots as easily, although the last 2 points aren't so bad on this machine relative to the worst. It's hardly an advantage to be able to stand this thing upright mid-clean. It's easier and more sensible to prepare the floor you're about to vacuum beforehand. But if you do have to stop mid-clean, you can easily rest a stick vac against a wall, or just put it on the floor seeing as you're bending down to pick something up anyway. The minor convenience of a self-standing machine is dwarfed by the drawbacks in every other area. Because the motor isn't as advanced as found in the much cheaper Dyson V15 and takes a long time to spin up to full power, it can't be used fully digitally. Being able to easily start and stop has been shown to avoid wasting up to 30% of the battery charge, giving correspondingly longer runtimes. Having an on-off button also worsens this problem by encouraging the machine to be on when not being used. The V15's trigger is feather touch and doesn't need any force to press it. Just holding the machine activates it, so it's no effort, and your hand does not get tired. I've also found it easy to accidentally knock the on-off button when carrying the machine by the handle, because it's placed exactly where you'd naturally grab it to move somewhere. There's also a speed button which cycles through the power modes. Charging this thing is a pain. You can't easily charge the battery outside of the machine because it's embedded deep into the body behind lots of covers in the bag. This means you've generally got to store the machine near a plug socket. You have to manually bend down to plug in and unplug the machine every time. This is ridiculous design the best have done away with. And if you did want to charge the battery outside of the machine, then you've got all the cumbersome battery management hassle to deal with, as seen in all the other cordless stick-vac clones. With the V15, you just put it back on the wall and it charges for you. No extra effort, it takes no time at all, and is just so much easier. There's also only a vague 3-stage indicator on the machine of remaining battery life, rather than a numerical heuristically learning countdown timer, which is far more useful. Similarly, charging progress is equally vague and unhelpful compared to the best, which provides detailed progress. This machine is only slightly heavier than the V15, but that extra weight isn't really noticeable in use. That is, until you attempt to do some above-floor cleaning. In case it isn't obvious by now that the upright form factor is a step backwards to a bygone era, it really bites here and makes it a really cumbersome hassle. It puts the weight of the relatively bulky motor and battery much lower down and further away from your hand, increasing the strain on your arm. You have to lift the entire bulky machine and hold it two-handed like a cannon just to use the crevice tool, as their advertising images show. It's really tiring and awkward to use. How would you clean your car with this? It's also really difficult to swap tools in and out. You've got to bend down and get on the floor to remove the main head from the body. The button design is really awkward and generally requires two hands to remove. You've got to hold the long, heavy and bulky body and reach to the end to get the crevice tool on. It's not convenient at all, and a world away from the single-handed design of the less expensive Dyson V15 tools and simpler modular design. And there's no onboard storage, which means you've got to store the crevice tool in a drawer, find it when you need it and carry it around. The crevice tool is very narrow and difficult to reach into hard to reach places, and they've copied Dyson's combi tool idea and incorporated a brush onto it. This is also the only tool this machine comes with, despite its £750 price tag. It doesn't come with any kind of motorised mini brush tool as standard. You've got to spend another almost £300 to get one. That's right, almost £300 for a brush tool that comes as standard in the much less expensive V15. And worst of all, this tool isn't even that good. It's a total nightmare to set up and even worse to use. You've got to take the main head off, plug this awkward hose with a wire tied on it, and then hold the machine upright with one hand because it no longer stands up on its own, whilst wrestling with a huge, clunky, stiff hose. It's ridiculously impractical, and I've no idea what they were thinking. The V15, you just clip on the hair screw tool and go. Total full freedom and flexibility to go anywhere. This is another example of the poor design and consequences of the upright form factor. When people suggest there's a benefit to a cordless upright form factor, singling out the ability to stand the machine upright, which is hardly a virtue, remind them of all these drawbacks. The mini brush tool doesn't have an articulating sole plate like on the V15 to ensure that you always make a full seal with the surface, so there's almost always suction loss when you're using it, preventing it from doing as good a job. There's a huge nose on this machine, making it fairly useless for stairs cleaning, because there's a huge region outside the brush bar and main air inlet which does no cleaning. They've tried to compensate for this, not by designing it better, but by putting another switch you have to deal with on the side. This diverts suction away from where it's needed with the brushes and towards the nose. While this helps, it's not as good as having good edge-to-edge cleaning like on the hair screw tool. And then there's stairs cleaning, and all the difficulties of trying to wrestle with hoses and the bulky body on the stairs. Total nightmare. It may have two counter-rotating brushes, but it doesn't even offer any kind of anti-hair tangling, which the V15 provides, meaning a complete time-consuming hassle detangling this machine, just like the main head. It's so difficult trying to remove hair from a complex brush bar like this. Remember, £750, and another £300 on top of that for this awkward monstrosity. And if you think you're done paying money, think again, because there's plenty more running costs to come. Another huge drawback of this machine is that it does away with any kind of advanced and clever filtration and relies on the all but obsolete bagged approach. Bags are a broad daylight scam to make the manufacturers more money by selling avoidable ancillaries and subjecting the customer to a microtransactional emptying tax. The bags for this machine are £3 each and have the same 0.8 litre capacity as the V15. Every time you want to empty, you have to pay this £3 surcharge. This is crazy. If you empty between once a week and once a month, you're looking at additional yearly running costs of between £36 and £156. So what, we're on a cost of £1,200 for the first year of ownership now? Is anyone else thinking possible scam yet? All the performance testing of this machine was done with brand new bags in pristine condition, which is of course completely unrepresentative of real world use, where you'd have dust loaded bags. I did want to test performance of this machine with fine dust in the bag, so I soaked up only a small amount of fine corn flour, and the multi-layer advanced HEPA bag clogged, as all bags do. Bags always lose suction with very fine dust. Now in fairness, the bags on this particular machine are fairly low volume, so might not actually accumulate much ultra-fine dust by the time it needs to be emptied, but still, they clog. The filters on the V15 perform the same function as a bag, but are a last line of defence rather than a first, because Dyson's cyclonic filtration is the best on the market by far and a hugely better approach to extracting dust from the air. The V15's filters do clog as well with this fine dust, but they're lifetime washable and easy to restore without the additional cost of a new bag. I should point out though that normal household dust isn't as fine as corn flour, so clogging fully in normal use should be rare. These bags weigh 32 grams each, and most of that is unrecyclable plastic waste. That's 32 grams of unnecessary and wholly avoidable landfill at £3 a pop. At an individual level, that's not much, but when you multiply this across all the bags being used in the world for this machine, that's a huge environmental impact that's totally unnecessary, all to make more money off the customer. Because these bags are so small, it's unlikely that smelly material in there will have enough time to fester before needing emptying, so smells are not likely to be a big issue. Many claim that bag cleaners are more hygienic and messless than cyclonic technology. This is possibly true for Dyson bagless clones, which have poor designs and do cause a mess when emptying, but the Dyson machines are designed very well to allow the user to avoid dust splashing during emptying by getting deeper into the bin. They objectively are messless and take 5 seconds to empty without any additional cost to the user or environmental impact. It's a hugely superior approach. And these bags are not as messless as some will have you believe. Firstly, they're oriented upside down in this machine. There's a rubber trapdoor to gravity close when the machine isn't on, except fine dust still leaks out when you empty. One additional flaw with this design I noticed is that if the bag gets full of heavier gritty material, when in eco mode, there isn't enough force from the flowing air to push this trapdoor open from all the dirt weighing down on it, and so the machine clogs and stops picking up until you change the bag prematurely, at cost. The virtues of bag cleaners are a complete myth peddled by those that seem to tribalistically hate the Dyson brand. Look out for them and call them out. There's enough evidence here to show they're utterly deluded. Ending on a more positive note, this machine is actually nice and quiet, and comparable to the best on the market they're competing with. Admittedly, this quietness is partly because they reduce the motor power, which has an impact on performance as shown earlier. It comes with a standard 2-year warranty, primarily driven by the lithium-ion battery technology that Cordless products are still lumbered with, although they do offer a no-quibble 14-day money-back guarantee, which is considerably shorter than Dyson's 35-day trial. Overall, I'm torn between recognising how good this machine performs relative to the more popular Dyson clones, but I'm also left thoroughly displeased by what this machine offers for its insane price tag. There's no point in being a good performer if it's costly to buy and use, and impractically cumbersome. that the Dyson products it competes with are considerably less expensive and utterly obliterate this in every meaningful metric makes the decision of which product to spend your money on a no-brainer for any sensible customer. You can get a far better product for far less with the V15. That will cost you £600, will come with all the tools you need and have zero hidden running costs as long as it's not abused. The Kobold, on the other hand, would cost almost twice as much in the first year for similar functionality, with further ongoing running costs. I hope people learned enough of the full truth from this video to make informed decisions. Thanks for watching.